Hi guys, good to have you back in class, whatever way we can. If you remember when we left off, before we left for spring break, we had started talking about the Industrial Revolution. And remember, guys, when we started talking about the Industrial Revolution, we said the British led the way. In order for the British to lead the way, though, they had to have another revolution first, and that was the Agricultural Revolution. And so this happened several decades before the Industrial Revolution. And so at that time, there was really two key events that took place that caused this agricultural revolution, the way that people in England um, grew crops and raised livestock. Okay, and the first one was the enclosure movement. So with the enclosure movement, the British government basically ended the last vestiges of feudalism. And remember, guys, part of feudalism was on the fief, you had these common lands, right? The commons. And so this was an area of land that the commoners could use to grow their own crops. And so the British government decided that this was no longer going to take place and they're going to allow private farmers to go out and buy up land and enclose the lands and make it private land for their use. And so this was a big deal for two reasons. One reason was this allowed farmers to um, really industrialize, in a sense, how they grew crops and raised livestock. And it really put the land in the hands of these gentleman farmers that were going to really revolutionize and use scientific method to help them grow more crops and produce better livestock. The second impact was this drove a lot of peasants, a lot of commoners off of the land and into the cities like London. And so that's going to be very important because that's going to provide that labor force for the Industrial Revolution. Now, speaking of these gentlemen farmers, there are really three gentlemen farmers that are going to pave the way for the Agricultural Revolution. One of those is Charles Townshend. Charles Townshend was a gentleman farmer, and he came up with this idea in the early 1700s to grow turnips as a rotation crop. So remember, guys, back during the Middle Ages, they left a field fallow. Well, he said, you don't need to leave a field fallow. Plant some other type of food source that will also put nutrients back in the soil. So that way you're always producing food. Okay, and so that's a big deal to feed people as our populations grow because of industrialization. And that obviously feeds industrialization for that labor force. The other individual was Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull invented the seed drill. So seed drill helps you put a seed down into the soil in nice, neat rows. And this is obviously helpful because instead of the scatter technique where you just drop the seed out and scatter it along and hopefully it takes, hopefully it does, or hopefully it takes, but it might not, you're much more likely to have your crop successfully grow. And then finally you have Robert Bakewell. And Robert Bakewell, he was interested in livestock and he revolutionized the idea of growing livestock or breeding livestock to produce animals that would produce a lot of meat. And so that's obviously important to feeding the people of Britain as well. And so he did this by selective breeding. So he kind of revolutionized the idea of selective breeding, of creating livestock that would be a good meat source. And so those things really helped accelerate the agricultural revolution and create the agricultural revolution in Britain. And this in turn helped establish the industrial revolution, because now you have the laborers, and now you have enough food to feed those laborers where they don't have to be on the farms producing food. So that's the key to the agricultural revolution, helping kickstart the industrial revolution in Britain. We're also going to talk about the Industrial Revolution from the lens of what we've done before in the past: man, moment, machine. And this time our moment for Industrial Revolution is the mid-1700s in Britain. And so like we just talked about, due to the Agricultural Revolution, you have at this time a large increase in laborers that can labor in mines, that can labor in factories and things like that. And they don't have to be on the farm producing food. You also have a Britain that is, although a small island with little resources, it does have two key resources: coal and iron ore. And so that's very important for the industrialization process. Those are going to be two key minerals for industrialization. Our man is James Watt. So James Watt happens to be a Scottish engineer. So here you have this engineer, which Scotland, remember, is part of Great Britain. Here you have this British engineer who comes up with a way to improve the steam engine. So 1769, Watt was granted a patent for an improved steam engine that he had created. And this is going to really get things moving as far as factories and eventually other things as well. And so this is very, very important also. And so like I said, you have everything coming together. You have this place in Great Britain where you are all of a sudden freeing up a bunch of laborers to work in the factories because of the agricultural revolution. You have a place that has a lot of coal, and obviously you're going to run that steam engine by burning coal, heating up the water to create steam, like we've talked about already. And so that is very, very important as well. So you have these two things coming together. You have the situation in Britain at the time, and you have James Watt coming together as well. And obviously that machine is the steam engine. So guys, steam engines, they've been around for a long time, since ancient times, but they weren't very practical. They couldn't really be harnessed the way they should be, the way the potential was, because steam creates a lot of energy, but it just wasn't practical, the prior steam engines we'd seen. So in 1712, Thomas Newcomen invented a steam engine, and this steam engine was mostly used to try and drain water out of flooded mines. But that was really all it was good for. You had a lot of situations where one, not real adaptable for gears and mechanisms and things like that. Two, it was dangerous. So you oftentimes had them blow up because of the pressure of the steam. Okay, and so Watt, after working on one of these, realized, hey, I can make a much better steam engine. Okay, so Watt's steam engine allowed for more purposes, more multiple purposes, and obviously was more efficient as well and safer. And so eventually they're going to use these in all these factories. Eventually you're also going to use them in locomotives and steamships as well. And so this is what is literally going to be the engine for the Industrial Revolution. And it all happened in Great Britain. Okay, and so this is going to be our first lesson, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon.